Hello Marvel Heroes fans, I just came back from a holiday, Perth, Australia, and I'm eager to share the next video with you. And by the way, thank you for all the comments coming in. I've read them all throughout my holiday and try to reply whenever I can. Okay, so this set of video is going to be called Damage Explained. And it's going to be more than one video because I wanted to make it, at first I wanted to make it into one video, but it seems a little bit too long. And I want to have like different episodes to it so as to at least space it out for you to sort of like internalize the whole thing before going into the next illustration and so on. And also give me time to verify some of the numbers as well. And I've gone through quite a lot of verification through the numbers, and I think at the last moment it matches, so I'm really happy to share this with you. All right. This is the whole entire series about Damage Explained. Now, I love this game because this game has a lot of dimension to it when it comes to damage, output, itemization. There's really no other games like Marvel Heroes. Now, but that is also give the challenge because sometimes it's very hard to interpret all those like damage rating, normal, crit damage rating, brutal damage rating. How can you really tell whether this artifact is better than the other one, this legendary is better than the other one? How do you do trade-off, between the different artifacts, different options as well? So, I'm hoping to be able to share my experience with you when it comes to interpreting all these numbers, and you be the one who make it your own, and you be the one who take all this formula, all this idea, and so on. And apply to your hero, because sometimes it's very easy to look into the guide and say, okay, you should do this, this, and this. But then every hero is different. Even if we are playing the same hero, the way that I build my hero and the way that you build your hero may be different as well. So I thought, why not I do a series of videos to share my experience with you when it comes to interpreting all these numbers, when it comes to understanding how the overall damage is being derived, as well as help you to trade off between different items. And you can really have fun, a lot of fun doing this, because I can give you a lot of advice on what to do, but the best thing you can do is that take some of this advice, internalize it, and make it your own, right? So that is what this whole series is about. Now, initially I have this discussion with my friends in Google Plus, because a lot of time we look into crit damage rating and say, well, that is the best stat that we should all invest in. And by and large, it's the right thing, because in my previous video as well, I talk a lot about the crit damage rating, because it is very hard to get the crit damage rating from certain, it's only available from certain items and so on. But if you read the tooltip, when it comes to crit damage rating, it is always said that crit damage rating is dealing a percentage of the normal damage. So, it is a product of two. So if there's a quiz for you, you only have 10 points to allocate to these two boxes right in front of you, and the result is the product of two. What would you be doing? Would you put like 1 to 9 points, or 9 to 1 point, or 5 to 5? You see, the answer is 5 to 5, because the more equalized the two side is when it comes to the product of it, you actually gain a lot more. And now, of course, this simplifies the whole thing, but it also helps you to give you an analogy when it comes to itemization, when it comes to working out the number that the best for your hero. While we always stress on the fact that we should go for this end game stat like crit damage rating, or by and large brutal damage rating, but you also need to understand that to make it work, you need the normal damage rating to multiply with it as well. So with that said, I hope this analogy gives you some idea to think about. Not just pour all your effort into doing certain thing, and because sometimes when you have a ring, right, one is say give you 150 range damage rating, while the other one give you like maybe 300 crit damage rating. So which one is better for your hero? Small things like this, you may need to some guidance, right? And the best thing is that if you know how all these formula work, and you can really do it off your head and say, oh yeah, that is better than the other one, because now I understand how it impact on my entire damage model. All right, so to explain the whole damage model, I've come up with a very simple model that works for me, because I'm a simple guy. I like to reduce all this complexity into something I can understand. I can very quickly go through my spreadsheet, work out the number and so on. And this is what I usually use. And now all these talks here is about end game damage model, because there's no point talking about leveling. Leveling is a different kind of like ball game, because I don't think leveling is really balanced through the heroes and so on. So let's focus on end game here. Everything here is about level 60, all right? And in a typical end game model, what you would probably want to strive having is having a crit of say 50. I mean, that's what a lot of people are going for. 40 to 60% of crit is what people's range is, depending on how many omega points you have. That will help a lot. And also, brutal is where the crit of the crit is important as well. A lot of people go 50% as well. So now what it really means is that, forget about normal damage right now. Let's not talk about the normal damage, right? Let's just focus on the crit and the brutal here. So imagine, because this game is like imagine you hit a target for 100 times. Now, not every time you hit it is a crit, but how often it crit depending on your crit percentage. So in this example, it's 50%. So when you hit the target 100 times, 50 times you will crit, and within this 50 times of crit, 25 times you get brutal, which is a red number, which is a big number there. So the first thing you need to understand is that this is like how should I say? It's more like an average kind of game here, because you're looking at the average damage. 50% of time there's no crit, so it's just non-crit. So this is the white area here. It's just 50%. It's 100%, meaning that that there's no gain in the crit or brutal. But when it comes to the crit damage, which is this one here, this one is actually a 300%. So this height here that you can see from here, from the bottom to the top, is actually 300%. All right, and that's what, when you mouse over to your hero's tooltip, it tells you that your crit damage is say 300%, and that is how it works here. And 50% of the time you actually hit it for 300%. All right. And then it will tell you that your brutal damage is 500%, for instance, right? So what it means in this whole average kind of like a model is that 25% of the time you actually hit 50%, 500%. All right, sorry, 500%. So this is one dimension of it. Well, actually two dimensions to it. One is that you want to get your crit as high as possible, but there's a diminishing return. So you want to extend this yellow box. The more to this side, the better, because it means that on average you get more crit. And then you also want to extend this brutal box as well, because brutal has a lot of like a damage bonus to it. So that's one dimension to it. Another dimension to it is the normal damage. Now I'm just picking any one of my hero. Most likely it was Punisher that I use it for illustration, but doesn't matter. You can have your hero, and I think in general hero may have like maybe 200 to 400%, depending on whether it's summoner or non-summoner, because it makes a difference. Another dimension to it that you have to pay attention is that there is a third dimension, the normal damage. The normal damage is the one that if say there's no crit, it's 400%. All right. If there is a crit, there's 400% times your 300% will give you that big number that you see. All right. And then after that, when you go to brutal range, you get the 500% times the 400%. So the normal damage is always stable, and which is the crit and the brutal that gets scaled up. So just bear in mind, in this model there are three dimensions to it: the normal damage, and I call it the normal damage, which is the what you see on your power hotbar. Those numbers that you see when you mouse over, it'll tell you that this power does this amount of damage. Those are called normal damage. All right, and then after that, when you hit the yellow number and the red number, and that's where you trigger off this multiplier to it. So to me, the average damage is what is actually the normal damage, all right, multiplied by this crit and brutal booster. So the way I see is this: all this crit damage and brutal damage, they're booster, they're the enhancer to the normal damage that you have. All right, and how do I derive this whole crit and brutal booster? Is that there's a formula to it. Now I know you may be like whoa, this is a really long formula, and I don't really like formula. So what I'll do, I'll explain this part to you quite slowly. I really hope that you can understand it. And then, you know, you can, when you work out on your Excel spreadsheet, you can actually punch in those numbers and you can see how it works, and that's the best. And I'll do another video on how to illustrate that to happen. But to explain about this line of formula, basically it's just the white part, the yellow part, and the red part here that correspond to the graph here. So 1 is 100%. So what it means is that 1 is the base of it. So, you know, imagine if your crit is 0%, so this becomes 0. The orange one or the red one also becomes 0. So your damage, just that normal damage times 1, right? So there's no enhancer, no booster to the normal damage. The normal damage just deal as normal damage. There's nothing there because you have no crit, right? So that is one part of it. Now, the crit part is the yellow part of it, you know. So bear in mind that the yellow part of it also, so that's how you see it, right? The yellow part is that this is 50%, correct? And the height of it is actually 300% minus the 100%, which is 200%. So here is 200%, here is 50%, right? So that is why you have this crit, which is crit percentage, which is 50%, times the crit damage minus 1. Crit damage minus 1 because I want the height of this yellow part here, minusing off the white part of here, right? So, but if you look at this end game model that, you know, the target model that I use as illustration 50-50%, you may notice that here is 100%, right? Here is 50%, but this is 200%, the height. So in fact, the area of the crit is the same as the area of non-critical. What it really means is that, forget about brutal, say your brutal is 0. What it really means is that so long as you can achieve a crit of 50% with a crit damage of 300%, you are actually on average doubling all your damage, normal damage. So instead of 400%, you got 800%, right? The last part is the red part here. The red part here is actually quite easy to work out because this length here is the crit times brutal. 50 times 50% is the 25% here. So here is 25%, right? And the brutal damage is the actual red. The height here is actually 500 minus the 300, which is 200% here. So it is the brutal damage minus the crit damage, which is this one, 200%, and it gives you the 200% times the 50%, right? So yeah, so that is how you work out this whole enhancer here, right? I hope that is that is clearer in some sense, right? So you know, it's a 25% times this 200% here, right? So what it means is that the total enhancement, the whole total booster here, the crit and brutal booster here, is 1 plus 1, right? And this 25% of 200% is 50%. So yeah, 0.5. So this whole thing is 2.5, right? So this whole area here on average is what you get is 2.5. So your average damage is 2.5 times the 400%, right? And that is why it is important when it comes to the you know, remember the quiz that I started with, you know, the toolbox and so on, and that's exactly what I'm trying to say here. You have on one side is normal damage 400%, on the other side, which is the crit and brutal enhancer, that's why I call it a booster, is 250%. So you have 400%, 250%. And the outcome is you multiply this together and that gives you the entire outcome. So you would like those two to be balanced in order to get the maximum product out from it. So also a very interesting point here, you know, many people ask, should I do plus fighting or should I do plus strength / plus energy? Now, taking up plus fighting, you lose 1%. Which is the normal damage here, right? So you lose the 1% and the normal damage. However, you gain the brutal damage, and if you work out the math, you're actually realizing that because although the brutal damage is lesser in general after you average that, lesser than the 1%, because it is a product of 2, the brutal actually is going to scale up more than the normal damage 1% being scaled up by the 2.5%. So 250% of this whole crit and brutal enhancer. So all in all, +1 fighting at the end game model is always better than strength or energy, provided that you're not looking for the spirit benefit from those strength or energy. And that's why I always advise people to look for the plus fighting, you know, on your pad, on anything that you have. in general is better, unless you have this mindset that you want to reduce the spirit. Now that is the spirit cost, and that is a different ball game, different kind of discussion. So yeah, to recap, this whole damage model, although it may look a little bit overwhelming with those formula here, is actually pretty straightforward when it comes to an Excel spreadsheet that I'm going to illustrate to you in another video. Remember, there are 3 dimensions to it. So one is that you want to push the crit to be as high as possible, because they will give you the nice yellow area, and also open up opportunity for brutal. You also would like to have a decent amount of brutal as well, because that gives you the red big numbers, and then after that you want to increase the crit damage and the brutal damage, because that will give you the area that you need. And last but not the least, don't forget your normal damage, because that is where you multiply the whole thing. The volume of this model is the overall average damage that you get from the hero, all right, on average. So now the next question is that I've got the answer here, but all this damage rating that you see on the gear and so on and so forth, to convert them, all you need to do is just to take the damage rating divided by 40. So for instance, the uru-forged, they always say 200 physical damage rating. So what does that mean is that 200 divided by 40 give you the 5%. So that thing give you 5% damage, adding on to the normal damage that you have. So remember the model I have, this gives you the death, another extra 5% onto that, all right? Now, having said that, you may be tempted to look into your hero score sheet on your UI, user interface, and you realize that, hey, look, I've taken my damage rating, I divided by 40, it doesn't match with the percentage shown on when I do a mouse over on it. Why is it that way? It took me a while to find out. This is because of the various factor, Omega system, your team up, your passive, your gear, anything that add percentage to your damage, it will not reflect as a damage rating on your score sheet. However, when you mouse over it, like the hero synergy as well, they will actually add it all for you. So if you manually add everything up, you will actually get the same. This formula actually is correct. It is divided by 40. All right. So if it doesn't match on your hero score sheet, it's because you have other things that you have checked, like hero synergy and stuff like that give you extra 5% here and there, give you another 2% here and there. So all these be add up. So you can't just take the number there on your hero's score sheet and do a divided by 40. But what you need to do is that on the gear itself, that's what you do. All right. So if you look at this uru-forged, and with this rune word, what do you get out from it, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to be able to convert very comfortably on your mind when you look at the gear and say, I know that it is giving me the extra percentage. So what it means is that for this that I give for Punisher, the uru-forged is 200 physical damage rating. Immediately you say that's 5%, right? 200, and then after that, 200 damage rating to range power, that is what? Another 5% to range power. And then 200 physical damage rating, another 5% to physical damage rating percentage. So at the end it's 15 because it's 5%, right? So it is powerful because now you can look into all the gears you have and you just mentally do a 40, roughly around there, right? So any gear that gives you the number, the rating number, you just divide by 40 and that's your answer. Or how many percent you get. But don't forget, like I said to you, this so-called percentage, you have to be affected by the crit and the brutal as well, because when they crit, this one scale up higher. When they brutal, this one scale up even higher. So this 15% is on the non-crit region. When you crit on your 300%, this one gets scaled up as well, and then after that scale up more. So always think when you do this modeling, do bear in mind that it's not only 15%, but it is overall modified by the crit and the brutal as well. And so the next question is, how about crit damage rating? Now, crit damage rating is a little bit peculiar because while the damage rating is divided by 40, crit damage rating is divided by 80. Again, when you do your, when you look at your score sheet, just bear in mind that it is affected by all the other things like team up or whatnot. Okay, team up may not have crit damage rating, but whatever that has a crit damage like hero synergy, you can add on to that as well. So it may or may not match when divided by 80, but this formula is correct. So, and also another thing to note is that all this damage rating has no diminishing return per se, because no matter how high your crit damage rating is, it's always divided by 80. Having said that, what it also means is that the higher, because it's all linear, right? So the higher your crit damage rating is, when you add another 5% to it, the overall impact when you normalize it may not seem to be that much. So you may not feel as powerful as when you were a little bit weaker. Because that 5% mean a lot more if your normal damage is only 200%, but when your normal damage is 400%, the 5% means a lot less. So this is not diminishing return, but however, just do note, because some people argue actually damage rating is still suffering from the diminishing return, but actually it's not. But it means that you feel less powerful as you add all these 5% in, because as you get higher, that 5% is not going to give you that as much punch as when you were weaker. All right. So if you look at this Gungnir, which is one of my favorite legendary, I know a lot of people say that, well, Gungnir is boring, but I don't mind doing boring, because if it is the best for my hero, I'll take it anytime. And in fact, my next video is about using all this model I talk about, and find out for yourself, for your hero, which legendary work for you. And for this Gungnir, just back to the topic itself, if you look at plus 1000 crit damage rating, you say, what is this, right? So this whole thing is plus 2000 crit damage rating. All you need to do is just take the plus 2000 damage rating and divide by 80, and that will give you 25%. So remember, this 25% is on the other side, which is the enhancer itself. Right? So if your crit damage rating is say 275, with Gungnir you can achieve 300. All right? And that, by the way, my friend, this 25% is being multiplied by your normal damage. So if your normal damage is 400%, then you have 100% out from this 25%. Now, of course, you don't crit 100% of time. You crit half the time. You still have 50%. So that's how you do your calculation. And I suspect that's also why the crit damage rating is divided by 80 instead of 40, just because I think Marvel Hero want to have some comparison between the two in some sense. But that's only my speculation. All right. So when it comes to brutal damage, now just bear in mind one thing: brutal damage is actually it works as a crit damage. The difference is that a portion of the crit becomes brutal, and that's all about it. So when it comes to brutal damage rating, it's also divided by 80, same as crit damage rating. But there's one thing you need to remember is that when you collect your crit damage rating, you actually improve your brutal as well, because brutal is just part of crit. There's no difference to it. It's just that for the 50% of the time, of the 50% of the time, which is 25% of the time, it will go in the red region and give you extra more stuff, and that extra is the brutal damage rating that you have. So when you look at the total brutal damage rating, remember it is the crit damage rating plus the brutal damage rating divided by 80 will give you the percentage of the brutal damage. All right, but all this aside, when it comes to gear comparison, you just need to take the brutal damage rating divided by 80 will give you the percentage increase on your existing brutal damage percentage. All right. So, but since we don't usually go for brutal, so there's really not much to be said there. I mean, just remember divide by 80, same as crit damage rating. All right. Okay, normal damage is a little bit trickier, and in fact, I've done up this video like this afternoon thinking that, okay, I've done my job, upload to YouTube, and that's it. And then I realized that, oh my God, I missed out something, or actually I misinterpreted something. So, so here's the one that I need to do it really carefully, all right? So how it works is like this. The normal damage is that without any modifier, meaning that without attribute, without passive, without gear, whatnot, you are at you are at the base damage. So your base damage, which is your, they design a game such a way that, this punch is say 2000 hit, right? And there's a base. And all this percentage that you see on the screen add on to this 100%. So what it means is that, okay, so the first one is base damage, right? So how does base damage being derived? Base damage is being derived by plus fighting, for example, because plus fighting give you, each rank of plus fighting give you 3% of base damage over 50% over the base. So when you see 60% there, it means that my normal damage is 100% plus 60. So instead of doing 100% of damage, I'm doing 160% add on to it. So always add it on to the base, which is 100%, right? 160%. Then they'll tell you that your power deals 75.2 increased base damage. Now, how does that come by? That is from your gear, when your gear says damage rating, all right? Those that you divide by 40 will go inside this bucket. But also bear in mind that this is also affected by your passive and so on and so forth. So, but whatever you mouse over, that's the correct one. That is the base one. Base one is the one that from your gear, from anywhere that set damage rating. All right, those go into that 75.2%. The next one is physical base damage. Now, physical base damage again is from attribute, which is strength. So whenever you see a strength, I think 4%. I think 4% of each rank of strength, 4% damage for each rank of strength. So if you have 10 plus 10 strength, you have 40%, all right, over base. So far so good. The next one is the one that got me. The next one is the physical damage. So whenever your gear say your physical damage rating divided by 40 will contribute to this number. Whenever there's a hero synergy or whatnot, also contribute to this number, and sometimes your team up may do physical damage, contribute to this number. This number actually, it is combined with the base damage. So basically, so this 110% is actually inclusive of the 75.2% that you see in it. So this one is actually inclusive of this one. So do not double count when you do your damage modeling. You have to remove this component when you do your damage modeling, because that is just not relevant to you. You always look for the higher one. Physical damage includes the this one here, because it say increase base damage. So inclusive, all right? So between these two. And then, if I'm doing Winter Soldier or Punisher, I do range, right? So range will have the range base damage. I think range base damage would be from the Omega system, which I don't have in this case. And then any gear, unique gear that is say plus that range power plus range damage rating, and then you have the rest of it, so for instance, like team insignia that you may have affixed on the range plus range, or rings that have a plus range, all this go into this bucket here. And this one, by the way, is really on its own, the range one. So that is something that tagging on its own. It does not include any of this so-called base nonsense. So how do you derive this thing is that, so first of all, like I said, ignore the one that on the base one, because you always look upon the higher one, which is the physical one. So you just need to start with 100%. Okay, don't forget, always start with 100% because that is your normal damage, starting point. Then you keep adding 60%, 77%, 110, and then 59%. The answer is 406.4%. So that is the normal damage that you derive from this model. So I hope so far you understand how this whole model is derived. It is important because all these are parameters to how you do your scenario analysis. When you say, oh, should I take this legendary versus should I take that legendary? Is 2000 crit damage is better off for me compared to say maybe 800 damage rating, right? So that is something that you should be quite familiar with, all right? And the last thing, this is the last slide here. I know it's a lot to absorb at this moment, but I just want to share with you when it comes to trade-off between the one item that has crit damage, the other one that has damage rating. be as legendary, rings, and so on. I actually work out a formula to do my analysis in terms of the trade-off, and that is the very reason why different hero is in fact you know, they are different. So you know, some guy will tell you that, you know, the trade-off between damage and crit is you know, 2.5% or 2% whatnot. You know, by and large they may be right, because when it comes to the endgame model, you more or less follow this profile that I've just said about, because I think somehow this whole game has to be balanced in some way. However, it is still unique. Each hero is still unique. So when it comes to those numbers that you want to compare, you may want to know exactly what happened. So, so this is the formula I use. This little triangle is called delta. So you know, the change, the gain in crit damage percentage. So I'm not talking about rating here, because rating is a little bit confusing, because you know, you have the crit damage rating is overstated compared to damage rating, because one is divided by 80, the other one is divided by 40. So I'm talking about the percentage. So the net gain in your crit damage percentage has to be greater than the net gain in your damage percentage multiplied by certain thing divided by certain things. Now, this is like, to me, it's like a coefficient if you do mathematics. So it would means that your item with the crit damage percentage has to beat certain has a range to beat. So you know, so long as you are higher than a certain you know, that the delta in the damage percentage with this whole bunch of things, it is better off taking the crit. If it doesn't beat it, then you know, there's no point taking the crit. So that's what it's about. Now, this crit and brutal booster is the one that I talk about. Remember the step diagram that I draw early on? So that is the crit and brutal booster. So you know, with the model I have on 50% crit, 50% brutal with the 300 crit damage rating, 500 brutal damage rating, it is an overall average 2.5. So that booster is 2.5. All right. So your normal damage could be 400%. So it could be 4. So you know, this should be 2.5. It could be 4. Then you know, then your crit is 50%. Now, if you rearrange this formula a little bit, if you say, because at the end of the day, you want to see, you know, there are two sides to it, right? Because remember the two boxes in our analogy I talk about, box 1, box 2. You know, you ultimately you want to make them sort of like, you know, comparable to each other, not to put everything on the one side. The change in the damage actually is this one here. The delta damage percentage over normal damage is what you gain from the damage gear. All right, so this part of the formula here is a ratio, right? So you know, how much gain you have on the percentage of the damage is always relative to normal damage. So for example, if your normal damage is 400%, right? If your delta is getting a 40%, so 40%, for example, then you know that you're gaining that 10% overall in the whole damage rhyme. On the crit side, it's always like this, right? The crit damage only relevant when it crit. So how often does it crit? Is when, you know, this crit percentage comes into picture, right? So your crit damage has to be multiplied with the crit itself. That will give you the, on average, how much crit damage you will get. So you know, you may say that with this gear, my crit damage increased by say 20%. But however, because you don't crit all the time, you only crit half the time, so on average you get 10%. So that is why you multiply by the crit, and you divide by the whole so-called crit and brutal booster, because that is relatively how much you gain from a percentage perspective. So you can take it as a homework, establish your own spreadsheet and try out. I've tried out, and it kind of like really fun to work and, you know, see some of the scenarios so on. So I thought I'd leave you with this formula just to take a look here. I'll do another video on how to illustrate all this number working. All right, so there'll be a lot more to come, and just stay tuned, because I intend to do another video on the on trade-off between legendaries, and also another video probably trade-off between like artifacts and so on. And I may look into a video talking a little bit about summoner, because I talk a lot about non-summoner here. Summoner is a little bit different because you actually have two graphs side by side. One has a fixed crit and crit damage rating and a brutal damage rating, like Rocket Raccoon, or if you spec Squirrel Girl or Iceman to be summoner, then you have the hero damage, which is what we talk about, as well as the pet damage, which is something that you need to look into hand in hand in tandem. So yeah, that's all, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And last but not the least, I would like to show you my loot from Australia, and I've got this from Australia, which I hope you can see. I'm not sure whether this webcam is strong enough or not, but it's Rocket Raccoon, my wife's favorite character. And also with that, also have the Groot as well. So there's Groot, all right. So this is a really nice figurine. I wanted to import it from Amazon.com, but I found it in Australia. It costs about $20 Australian dollar for 2 pieces, which I think is a really good bargain. So I quickly grabbed the last Rocket Raccoon and also a Groot that go along with it. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, any question you can always drop me a comments here. Stay tuned. Next video will come. More illustration, more spreadsheet, more hard work. Bye.